Okay, the recording has started.
Aha. Awesome. Look at that. Okay. So there was a few more people that said they would attend. A couple people have to leave sooner than later, so I wanted to start, but we'll give them another 2 minutes to show up. So we have a customer who wants to see BizTalk, and they want to be able to communicate with ultimately FTP and MQ series. And they asked about scheduling BizTalk as a scheduler, and they ultimately wanted to see BizTalk communicate with an SFTP location. For a demo, we don't have an SFTP server available or software on a server, and so we convinced them that just showing them standard FTP would be sufficient, and so wanted to give you guys a taste of what we're doing, since a lot of you were on the email threads this weekend of me getting MQ series up and running. Wanted to give you guys an opportunity to see what I was attempting to accomplish. The demo will happen tomorrow, is when the customer has agreed. That being said, it's about 6 after, so if people are going to arrive, they should be hopping in. We're going to use the enterprise service bus to show this demo, to show some tracking capabilities that run on top of BizTalk that feed from the exception database from BAM, and allow you to see what's going on. And this, what we're seeing right here is the itinerary flow designer, and we get data in. We're going to log some information, the original file name. We're going to log the person who put the requisition in, and then we're going to map it to a canonical message. And this all happens on the on-ramp, which essentially runs in the pipeline. And then we call an external web service. This web service goes and checks some validation, and then we call a second web service called the internal web service, which does some additional validation. Once we get that response, then we route the data, and the data gets routed to the archive, where so we archive the original data, and then based on the if it's a high order or a low order, we apply a discount by calling another web service, and we send it off to the high destination, which in this case is the MQ series. And if it's low, we drop it off to a file to see data output. So I'll show you the destinations. We've got the archive directory here that's empty, and that is defined by this set destination here. And we're putting data in the C data output archive directory, and then the low destination, we send it off to the C data output low. On the send to high, because we're using the MQSC adapter, there's not a transport protocol in the enterprise service bus to use the MQSC adapter. So what I've done is I've created a separate web, orchestration that essentially is hard coding or using a specified later port. And so if I go to BizTalk admin console, bring that up. Sample flow, and I go to my send ports. I'm sending it to the 2.mq1 over TCP using the queue manager called QM, and the QM1, and the queue itself being called Q1. So I can jump over to my MQ Explorer. In my queue manager, we've got one queue called Q1, and currently there is 0 queue depth, so there's no messages here. I've got my orchestration here, my hard-coded orchestration that's bound to this particular send port. So I've got it all wired up, and I will push, and our receive location is from the ESB. We're going to a local FTP location where we just pick up start.xml, and we are choosing the process requisition itinerary to process this data. So we'll look at the input message. This is what our requisition looks like. George Harrison, order number, and the amount. And so I'm gonna pass this through. Open up my our FTP location, and because I want to show the querying capabilities, this FTP location is set to run every 90 seconds. So a minute and a half, it'll go out and pick up files. That being said, I'll go back here and we'll take a look and refresh this and wait for it to disappear. Looks like it just did. I'll jump back to my portal, and as we're seeing, it picked up the file, the requisition, and it's in status yellow, which means it's in flight. So I can actually click on, it actually turned green. I didn't press refresh or anything, but I can go through, and based on the tracking that is in the enterprise service bus and how it's presented, how it's stored in the BAM primary import database, I can see where it went, where this message went. So I clicked on the link. It's going to open up a detail page. It shows me the status. It shows me some information that I care about, the high number, the service state, the file name, and then the person's name. And I can tell at what time this process went through. We logged some information. We mapped it to the canonical. We called the external web service and the internal web service. Then we routed the data, sent it to the archive, and then also went to the high branch, logged what the high information was, applied the discount, and then sent it to the high destination. Now, the high destination in this process sends it to MQ series. So we'll go and we'll look at this current QDEF. We're now at 1. I can browse the messages, and if I look at the data, here's our data. So it went through successfully. This is all well and good. However, sometimes there's bad data. And bad data means there's generally two types of bad data. Either something's wrong with the process, an endpoint is down, or the data is actually bad. So we'll talk about the bad data first. So I've got a bad requisition that doesn't match our business rules. So I'm going to put that back out here. And we have to wait up to 90 seconds. This is running at Fabric in the background that serves up the data to the portal. This is currently being converted from at Fabric to Redis, so it can be run in the cloud. And we're also converting from SharePoint to a MVC website, so that it's easier to view on mobile devices, etc., etc. So, and you'll notice I'm using Chrome. This works across all the major browsers, Safari, etc., etc. Oh, it looks like this one failed. Notice the status is red. So I can click on this, and I can see that it failed on the call external web service. And so I'll collapse this. I can click on the fault, and what happens is it shows me information about what actually happened. I'll go here, fault string is non-numeric, and the value A8 is not numeric. Okay, and so the request that we sent off to the web service was A8, but I can't really do anything here. This is just showing me the request that went off and the fault that we got back. So I'm going to go back to my original payload, and I can change this. So let's change that to order number 8. Frank Williams. And notice as I'm making changes, I can see the changes that I've made. I can reset it back to the original one. Okay, and so I'm going to save it. All right, and then I'm going to resubmit it. Now, in the out-of-the-box ESB toolkit, it always resubmits at the beginning of the itinerary. We could never figure out a reason why you'd want to resubmit at the very beginning, especially if you've got transactions going on. If I'm charging a credit card, et cetera, I don't want to resubmit at the beginning. I want to resubmit at failure. So the default behavior is to resubmit at the point of failure. So I'm going to resubmit it again. Now that I made that change, as it resubmits it to the message box database, this takes a little bit to send the data to the message box database, but also to refresh all the cache that goes on. Notice it logged the master account, and because I resubmitted it, I don't have the ability to save it to do anything with the data now because it's already been committed. Looks like we got another fault. So our first fault was this client non-numeric language English detail message, et cetera. So we'll look at this fault. All right, and this is a different fault. The fault string is the value is too small, valid not entry exception, and the number 8 is less than 100. Oh, okay. So let me change this to 890, 809. All right, save that. And let's resubmit it. All right. You'll notice that at 213, that's when it went to that second step. In the third step, it failed twice. I resubmitted it, and now it's going through. You'll also notice that it logged my user ID in both places, so that for auditing purposes. And it went through the flow. It sent it to the archive. It did not log it in the high branch or applied the discount. It went to the low branch, so I can go back to the archive. I've got 2 files now, and I'm looking at the low, and I now have the low message here. If I go back to MQ series, I still should only see 1 message because it didn't go through the high branch. Does that make sense so far? The lack of comments saying yes, it makes sense. The next thing we're going to do is, so we've said where we have some faults when data isn't correct. But what happens when services are unavailable? We're going to go down and we're going to go and shut off the web service, the app pool for those web services, so that we can see what happens when a destination isn't available. And the default app pool is what runs those web services. So I turn that off, and I will resubmit a good message again. All right. Now, while we wait for that to pick up, we'll go back to the portal, and we go back to our grid view and it shows the two messages that have been passed through thus far. So we're waiting for the next message to come through. 90 seconds is awfully a long time. All right, it got picked up. So currently BizTalk is processing it, and the portal actually goes out. The caching mechanism goes to the BAM primary import database every 5 seconds, and then the portal looks at the cache every 5 seconds, so you can have some delay in displaying the data, but what is displayed is the real times. So if I go to the process requisition here, we'll collapse this, take a look at the fault. The address is this string service, and the service is too busy or no endpoint was found listing at the specified address. So in this case, I don't need to change any data. All I need to do is go back and turn on my app poll. Turning it back on and resubmitting it. All right, it resubmits successfully. All right, it went back through the call external web service successfully this time, 2 minutes later, and it should go through the rest. I did put some timers, I did put some delays in these web services because if I didn't, everything would be gray and then it would automatically be green. There wasn't any showing progression as it went through. So we put some delays in there, but you'll notice it did go through. Anyone have questions thus far? I went to the high, so I can go back to the high, and I should see, yep, got 2 in the current view depth. The last piece is the on the weekend or in the evening when no one's around, the web service can go down. And by the time anyone gets to actually resolving it, we've got a big problem because multiple messages have gone through. So I'll show you our bulk resubmission process. I'm going to stop the app pool again, and I'll create some data. How many? Let's create 65 messages. If I go to the mass data, I've got 65 messages here. So I'll go to my mass directory and I'll copy all of them to be picked up. All right. And we'll go back to the portal, go back to the home screen. This should turn green after refreshing. And then all we need to do is wait for these to be picked up. While we're waiting, does anyone have any questions? No? one of the, you'll notice that as we've been working, as I've been giving the demo, other than to show you the FTP connections, all the things that I've been doing have not been with the BizTalk admin console, which is a good thing in the fact that I don't, to administer this process, I don't need to be part of the BizTalk server administrator group. You'll notice that it picked up the files. If I go back to my FTP site, they're all gone. I can use my arrows on my keyboard to flip through the particular screens if I want. So we'll go in and take a look. Yes, the endpoint isn't available. Look at all the details. I don't particularly want to resubmit these one at a time. I will turn the app pull back on. I'll go back to the portal and I'll resubmit this one. And this one should go completely through. All right. Looks like it went through. Now I don't necessarily want to go back into each of these pages and click resubmit. It's going to take me quite a while. So what we've enabled is on the front page to this button here, which allows us to highlight all the ones that are currently marked as in error. And I'm going to resubmit all of them back to the bus now that I've fixed my problem. So it gives me a status so I know that it's doing something. All right. 64 were resubmitted successfully, and they've all been changed back from red to yellow, meaning they're in flight. I'll go ahead and click on one of them so you can see what's happening. Status is in flight. And as it runs through, I can tell at 224 is when I submitted it. 227 is when I resubmitted it. And because I was the one who pressed the resubmit button, my ID is logged as the person who sent this, who resubmitted it. Go back to the front page. And it looks like some went down the high branch, some went down the low branch. And I can go and take a look at my low branch. Looks like we got a lot more records now. And I go to the archive. I've got even more data. And in my high branch, or in MQ series, I've now got 28 messages instead of 2 that I had before. That being said, that is the support side. This is the user side.
Is anybody else on the call?
Yeah. Hey, Eric, you ended up getting muted.
I was able to hear him through the entire call. Were you not able to hear him? Did it record him?
Yeah, we had him for quite a while, but then just like about a minute ago, he seems to be muted.
Okay. I'll see if I can get him on Messenger real quick.
Hey, this is Eric. Was I on mute the entire time?
Not the entire time,
Or
just
1.5 minutes ago.
Okay. Sorry about that. So where did I lose your voice?
you said that was the end of the customer
Oh, okay.
part.
So that was the end of the customer facing side, operation support, business analyst support. I could go on and talk about the developer experience if that would be something that you guys would be interested in seeing. Yes, no?
Well, if you can just give a quick rundown of it, that'd be interesting.
Sure. So on the developer side, we're using the itinerary flow designer, which comes as part of the ESB toolkit. However, we've expanded upon it. Out of the box components are the on-ramp and this messaging extender. We've created some additional extenders. We've created the reprocessing. Well, I'll start on the left. We've created the logging messaging extender, and what this does is says, at this point I want to log some information. And what's really going on behind the scenes is we're creating a BAM activity. And so in this we've created we want to log some information, and we specify whether there's going to be a continuation token created or not, because I want to log some additional information down below. So I set this to true, and I specify storage, so I can store the data at that point in the BAM database to see what the data looks like after the fact. We created some resolvers. This log file name, this gives me all the context properties that are currently deployed to the management database. So it goes out and queries all the context properties of what's there. And so I can log that information. Sometimes, however, we want to log payload data, and so we created a XPath logger that allows us to put a where in the data we want to pull, where in the data we want to pull the value we want to show up in the portal, that happens in the pipeline. However, we have an orchestration-based version also, where we do the same thing. We can log the order number, which is a different XPath statement. Then we have this call external web services. This call external web service, which is the reprocessing orchestration extender. When we originally designed this, we felt that it should stop and restart at the point of failure. However, some customers said, if we have a failure at night, we want it to continue on and mark it as a problem, but we want to continue processing. It's important, but it's not critical that this step happens. And so what we have now is a reprocessing orchestration extender, which says the reprocessing behavior is that we want to stop, but we can continue or we can reset, saying if it fails, we want to continue on and continue processing, even though there was a failure at this step, or to reset, saying I want to start back at the beginning of my orchestration as the default behavior of the itinerary flow designer, or the default ESB toolkit was designed. So we've added that. The last piece is the orchestration broker. This is new. There's not this capability in the out of the box other than as a messaging-based orchestration broker. And so this one allows you to make a decision midway through an itinerary instead of just at the beginning of the itinerary. And here we have different resolvers, the payload to look at the payload and make decisions on these outports based on the payload or off of the context of the message and make decisions. The nice part about the broker is I can route data to one too many places. In this send to archive, we are using where the context property is if we're at the orchestration broker stage of the itinerary, I want it to send to an archive. Since it's already there, we know that's always going to be true. And then for our high priority, if the order number is greater than 853, I route it to the high destination, and if it's less than 853, we route it to the low destination. So it adds significantly more functionality to the itinerary than what currently is available. The last part is we've been designing the itinerary flow design. We've been designing this itinerary. We've specified that we want to log information. When we originally developed, we had to create a BAM activity that mirrored what we are trying to log here. And so we merged that into the same component. So we created a couple different extenders. And we'll choose the XML itinerary exporter so we can see what happens. We have a couple new features. The caching mechanism, so how we cache the data from the itinerary or from the exception database in the BAM primary import into memory, and the BAM activity that represents this itinerary. And so I'll export it. And what it does is it reads through the itinerary and creates a BAM activity that you can then promote up through your other environments. Here's your BAM activity, the high number, the low number, the name, the file name, and then the actual itinerary itself. Once I've deployed that, setting up a new itinerary in the portal is pretty straightforward. Click home. All I do is I click on this ESB environments, and I can look at the properties of each of these itineraries that I've set up, and allows me to copy and paste new ones if I need to. The nice part about it is I can monitor multiple environments from one portal. So if I'm looking at test or development or QA, I can look at all those environments from one place, which makes it nice. It exposes the business processes that run through BizTalk to the users, the business analysts, a lot sooner. Instead of BizTalk being a black box, it exposes what's going on there, and allows the business to view and see what's going on sooner than later. The other thing that I forgot to mention is we showed a friendly viewer of the XML data. And let's see, do I have any bad data? We'll drop that bad file off again. Here. Go back here. So we have a friendly XML viewer, which a lot of business analysts, when we have shown them the data, they've called it, oh, well, your code is wrong. And it's not really code, it's just XML data. But if they're used to looking at Excel spreadsheets, et cetera, looking at XML data is somewhat daunting. And so we've made that friendly XML viewer that allows you to only edit the field that should be edited and make sure that the data is properly formatted when it gets sent back to BizTalk. However, there are cases where we need to edit the raw data, and as soon as this gets picked up, we'll take a look at that. All right. All right, so there's our fault. We have an information button. Sometimes we call back the customer and they said, you know what, we'll just resubmit it again. So what you can do is mark this message as an information only so that it's not an error. So it marks it as blue. I can't resubmit it or do anything. I'm the one who marked it as informational, but I do want to revert it back because I want to edit it. Perhaps this, and I can actually go back and look at the raw data, and I can edit it in its XML form. For those who are more XML savvy, or there's a node that's missing and I need to add it, so I can add it. I change it back to the friendly XML viewer. Other than that, that's majority of the things that we've added to the ESB toolkit, and then it gives a decent visibility into your business processes and gives a very user-friendly interface into what's happening, what's going wrong. The other nice part is you can segregate system errors. The website is down from the business errors, so that the business sees the errors that they are in charge of fixing data, whereas the operations staff can just look at system exceptions. The website is down, so that those appropriate people are managing and doing the work that they're assigned to, and not having to cross the borders that generally are defined within a company. Does that make sense?
Cool.
I didn't know you guys extended the ESB toolkit that much. Good job, Eric.
Yes, the next, what we're really doing is enabling this to be moved into the cloud. We're changing from App Fabric to Redis, so we can run it to Redis being on-premise or in the cloud. And then we're changing from SharePoint to MVC so that the portal itself can be hosted in the cloud. And then this information can be surfaced through BAM, which is somewhat in flux on where it's going to live in Azure or not. But it adds a lot of value and potential sales opportunities to assist customers in moving to the cloud. Even if they've got on-premise BizTalk, they can move components of their BizTalk process into the cloud, and helping that adoption of Azure.
That's what we want to hear. Move it to the cloud. Brilliant. I'm sure our customers
That's
will
right.
find that most valuable.
Yep. Cool. Is there any other questions?
How do you install the MQ client server on the same box? Just
Well, when you install, make sure you do not just choose the standard installation, which does not install a client. That's the big.
that was my
big
mistake.
takeaway. Well, there's actually two things that you have to worry about. The first one is to make sure that the client is installed. The second is, by default, they have a rule that disallows any communication to MQ series, and so you have to go delete that rule. Otherwise, it gives you that error. Those are the two things that caught me. So yes, that was an adventure getting installed. It's been a while since I played with MQ series, and probably the first time that I've actually set it up on a machine. Every client that we've had to communicate with MQ series, they've had it in their environment for years, and so communicating with MQ was always easy for us because it was already set up, ready to go. So it was a learning experience in setting up MQ. So anyway, well, that's my presentation. I hope that the new client, is impressed enough with what can be done, especially the hands-off approach to not having to understand the BizTalk administration console and intricacies of that. Well, cool. There's no
Excellent.
other questions. If there's no other questions, then we'll call it a day. End the meeting early. Does that ever happen at Microsoft?
Sure, once in a while. Thanks a lot, Eric. Really cool stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Talk to you soon.
Valerie, if you could